They told the town she had fled. They whispered that Willa Thorne had lost her mind and wandered into the Arizona backcountry to fade away. That story was clean, convenient. It was also a lie. It was a lie stitched together by a man in polished boots and fine cloth to bury a crime that hadn't finished its work. He abandoned her in a collapsing lined cabin with no food, no firewood, and a door barred from the outside. He trusted winter to do what his hands would not. He believed the wolves would erase his guilt. What he forgot was this mountain's watch. And when an Apache warrior named Koda smashed that door open, he did not find a body. He found a fight. This is the tale of the woman left to die and the warrior who refused to forget her. Up in the high country of Arizona, the wind didn't drift. It howled. A living white fury that flayed skin and stole sight. To Koda, a Chiricahua Apache, the storm was no enemy. It was cover, U.S. Cavalry patrols stayed penned inside Fort Bowie during weather like this, warming their hands over iron stoves, cursing the land they never learned to read. Koda slid through knee-deep drifts like a passing shadow, following a wounded elk, meat enough to keep his people alive in the Dragoon Mountains for weeks. Then at the crest of a ridge, the elk's trail vanished. In its place came something wrong. Coal smoke, thin, fading, but real. He squinted into the sleet. Below, hidden in a sunless cut of rock, squatted a shack. Not a homestead. A forgotten trapper's stop. An old shine shack. Long abandoned roof bowed like a snapped back. No smoke touched the sky. The scent was stale. He slowed Winchester loose in his hands. Bounty hunters used bait like this. He circled wide, reading the snow. Nothing. No tracks. The ground around the door lay smooth and untouched. Whoever was inside hadn't stepped out for days, maybe longer. He reached the door. A thick wooden beam pinned it shut on the outside. Koda's brow tightened. You bar a door that way to keep beasts out or to keep someone trapped. He lifted the beam and drove his boot through the rotting planks. Inside was colder than the storm. Wind tore past him, lifting ash from a dead hearth. He stepped in, eyes adjusting. The place held nothing but a broken table, a three-legged chair, and a heap of filthy cloth in the corner. He turned away, disgusted. Then the heap moved. Just a twitch. A shudder. Enough. Koda crossed the room in 2 strides and tore back a moth-eaten blanket. He stopped cold. A woman. Skin pale as frozen milk. Lips split and bleeding. Blonde hair tangled with sweat and grime. Curled tight, clutching a locket so hard her fingers had gone white. She looked gone. Yet a faint breath fogged the air. A settler woman. Unarmed. Fragile in a way the frontier usually burned away. She wore a blue silk dress, once fine, now ripped and soaked through, useless against mountain cold. Koda dropped to one knee. Wake up, he said, rough English breaking through the wind. Her eyes flickered open, green lost in fever. She didn't scream. She didn't pull back. She stared at the painted warrior above her rifle slung low and whispered a single name. Cyrus. Koda shook his head. He saw the dry bucket, the walls scraped bare where she had chewed moss and insulation to live. This wasn't hunger. This was punishment. Someone locked her here and waited for winter to finish the job. He took dried venison from his pouch and held it to her mouth. She didn't understand at first. He softened it with snow and pressed it to her lips. She chewed weakly, tears slipping free and freezing along her cheeks. She tried to speak again, fingers clutching his buckskin sleeve. Don't. Let him. Take the boy. Koda glanced around the dim, frozen cabin, but there was no boy. What boy? He asked, scanning the shadows. She didn't answer. Her eyes rolled back and her body went limp in his arms. Koda rose slowly. His people had their own code when it came to the white settlers, those who took more than they gave. but leaving a woman to freeze, locked away like an animal, that wasn't the work of warriors. That was the mark of a coward. And Koda had no use for cowards, not even in the cavalry. He bent down and lifted her with ease. She was weightless like a bundle of dried sticks. Wrapping her in his buffalo robe, he kicked the warped door shut behind them and stepped into the teeth of the storm. He wouldn't take her to the fort. The moment they saw him, they'd shoot first and ask questions never. He had only one place in mind, the dragon's throat, a hidden cave known only to him. Willa Thorne dreamed of fire. She saw the grand hearth back in the Thorne home in Tucson. Oak logs, crackling silver trays, clinking with porcelain teacups, the scent of orange peel and cinnamon in the air. She saw Cyrus Maddox by the mantel, sharp-eyed and handsome, telling her she was sick, hysterical, in need of rest. Then the fire turned cold, the vision shattered. She was in a carriage, windows blacked out the rough hands of hired men dragging her through the night. The bump of wheels over rocks, the sound of a wooden bar slamming shut from the outside. Silence. She gasped awake. This wasn't the shack. She was lying on pine branches and soft furs. Above her, soot-black rock reached upward, and a real fire, burned in a stone circle at the heart of the cavern, shadows dancing like spirits across the walls. She scrambled back, hitting cold stone behind her. "Arthur!" she croaked, voice raw. "Water." A deep voice came from the darkness. She squinted eyes, searching. A man sat just beyond the flames, sharpening a blade on a flat river stone. He looked wild, powerful. His long black hair tied back with a red cloth. Buckskins clung to his frame, and ochre paint streaked his face across the cheekbones like war thunder. An Apache. Her breath caught. The stories the Tucson ladies whispered behind gloved hands flooded her scalping blood, unspeakable things. Her heart thudded in her chest. She clutched the buffalo robe tighter to her throat. "Please," she whispered. "I have no money. My husband, he's the one with the money." The warrior didn't flinch. He stopped sharpening the knife and reached for a gourd ladle, dipping it into a bowl. He offered it to her. "Drink," he said simply. "Willow bark, for fever." She hesitated. Her throat felt scraped raw. Trembling, she crawled toward him and took the gourd. The liquid was hot and bitter, but it cooled the fire in her chest. She drank every drop, then managed with more strength. "Where am I?" "Safe," the warrior said. "I am Koda." "I'm Willa," she said softly. "Willa Thorne." Koda gave a small nod. His next words came without a trace of doubt. "Who locked the door, Willa Thorne?" The question hung heavy in the firelight. She shut her eyes. The shame was deeper than any fever. Saying it would make it real. There'd be no pretending, no excuses. "My husband," she whispered. "Cyrus Maddox." Koda didn't flinch. He tossed another stick onto the fire. "Why?" "Because of the baby," she murmured instinctively, pressing a flat palm to her stomach. "He thinks I can't bear children. 5 years, no child. He wants to marry the governor's daughter. Make it political." She looked into the flames, her voice cracking. "But he couldn't just leave me. The church, society. It wouldn't allow a divorce unless I was mad or dead." Her eyes filled with tears again, running hot down her cheeks. "He told everyone I'd lost my mind. Paid men to take me away. Said I'd just fall asleep in the snow. That I wouldn't feel a thing." Koda stared into the fire, quiet, then spoke low like gravel. "White man builds big house to hide a small heart." "I have to go back," Willa blurted, a panic rising in her throat. "You don't understand." She swallowed hard. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I lied to you." Koda arched an eyebrow. I'm not barren, she choked out. I found out 2 weeks before he took me. I tried to tell him. He wouldn't listen. Her voice caught in her throat. He'd already arranged the wedding, signed the papers, threw me in that carriage before I could show him the doctor's note. Koda watched her in silence, his gaze hard as mountain stone. This woman carried a life inside her, one her own husband had tried to erase for politics, and a richer bride. The thought of it set Koda's blood on fire. He'll believe you're dead, Koda said at last. By spring wolves would have scattered whatever was left. He holds the deed. Willa Thorne answered, her voice trembling. The ranch. The land. It was my father's, Thomas Quinn's. It's in my name. If I die, Cyrus Maddox takes everything. If I live, he gets nothing. That's why he couldn't just leave me. Koda rose and walked to the mouth of the cave, staring into the breaking storm. Snow thinned. Wind eased. Rest, Willa Thorne, he said. Tomorrow you don't go back to die. Tomorrow we teach you how to live. 3 weeks slipped by. Winter stayed vicious in the Dragoon Mountains, but inside the cave, something steady took shape. Koda never treated Willa like glass. When the fever broke and strength returned, he put work in her hands. He showed her how to scrape hides which roots fed you and which stopped your heart, how to cross snow without cracking the crust. The polished woman from Tucson vanished. In her place stood a woman with hard palms, wearing altered buckskins, blonde hair braided tight. One night by the fire, Koda placed a heavy coat revolver in her hands, old steel, pitted, likely stripped from a fallen soldier. Kicks like a mule, he said. 2 hands. Willa weighed the gun, then looked up. Why are you doing this? Why not leave me, or trade me to the fort? Koda nudged the coals with a stick. My sister, he said quietly. 10 winters back, soldiers took her, called her a spy, locked her in a wagon with no water. She died before they reached the fort. He met Willa's eyes. I couldn't save her. I can save you. Willa reached out and touched his hand the first time she'd done that. Cyrus isn't just a rancher, she said. He's building a circle. He owns Sheriff Jet Kincaid. He pays Judge Pendergast. If we go back, it won't just be Cyrus. It'll be the law, Koda said. The law is paper, he added. Justice is lead. I need the bank in Tucson, Willa said, thinking fast. My father left a copy of the deed in a safety box. Cyrus thinks he burned the only one. If I get it and reach the U.S. Marshal Eli Blackwood, a man he can't buy, I can prove it's mine. Strip him bare. Tucson's a long ride, Koda warned. And by now Cyrus Maddox has mourned you. If he sees a ghost, he'll shoot first. Then I won't go as Willa Thorne, she said, studying her reflection in a pool thinner, sharper. Willa Thorne died in that cabin. A horse whinnied below. The sound echoed up the canyon. Koda smothered the fire with dirt. Darkness swallowed the cave. He signaled Willa back and took the entrance. On the narrow trail below, 3 riders picked through the snow. Not Apache heavy dusters, wide hats. Tracks, one called. Fresh elk and boot prints, small ones. Willa edged to Koda's side and looked down. Her blood turned cold. The lead rider was a red-bearded giant. I know him, she whispered. Boone Rask, Cyrus's foreman. He locked the door. Koda jacked his Winchester. He's here to check the work, make sure Winter finished it. His voice dropped to a growl. If he finds us, he won't. He's found the wolf's den. Now he meets the wolf. Koda glanced at her. Can you shoot that pistol, Willa? She looked at the iron in her hands and thought of the governor's daughter while she froze. She thumbed the hammer back. The click boomed in the cave. I can shoot, she said. Below, the 3 riders eased forward. Boone Rask was a man who usually enjoyed his work. Even for a man like Boone Rask, checking whether the boss's wife had turned into a corpse wasn't a task he relished. Cyrus Maddox had slipped him 500 in gold, enough to bury questions along with a woman, so long as spring thaw didn't bring truth clawing back with it. Boss, I got a bad feeling about this, muttered the second rider, a twitchy kid named Nate Barlow. This here's Apache country. Shut it, Nate, Boone snapped. Them Apaches are down in Mexico for the cold months. Ain't nothing up here but snow and bones. That's when a shot cracked through the air. The hat flew clean off the third man, Cade Mercer, a hired gun, and he let out a yelp, tumbling off his horse and diving behind a jagged boulder. Ambush! Boone bellowed, ripping his rifle from the scabbard. Take cover. High above Koda moved like a spirit, swift, silent, shifting position without ever being seen. He wasn't aiming to kill. Not yet. He wanted panic. He wanted them scattered. Stay here, Koda ordered Willa Thorne. Keep eyes on the trail. If one of them gets close, shoot. Without waiting for her reply, Koda slithered over the cliff's edge like a mountain cat. 20 feet down, he landed in the snow behind the riders. Boone fired wildly toward the cave, shouting, "Come out, you rats! You're boxed in." Koda rose from the snowblade in hand. He lunged for Cade, who was crouched behind a rock, trembling. Before the man could let out a cry, Koda's knife hilt slammed into his temple, dropping him cold. Nate saw it. "They're behind us," he screamed, firing blindly into the trees. Boone spun his rifle, snapping toward Koda's shape. But the Apache was already moving, darting between trunks like a shadow. Boone fired. The shot shaved bark inches from Koda's cheek. "I see you, Injun," Boone howled. "Gonna mount your damn head on my wall." Up above, Boone forgot the high ground. Willa knelt, eyes squinting through the pistol sights, hands trembling. That was the man who'd sealed her in a tomb of snow and silence. She inhaled, held it, and pulled the trigger. The revolver thundered in her grip. She missed barely, but the round slammed into a rock near Boone's horse. The beast screamed, rearing in panic. Boone lost his seat and crashed hard into a snowbank. Koda was there in an instant. He drove Boone into the snowblade to throat breath like steam between clenched teeth. "Don't move," Koda growled. Boone froze wide-eyed. You're that Apache stray, and you're the one who kills women." Koda replied coldly. "I didn't kill her," Boone gasped. "I just left her. It was Maddox, he paid me." "Where is he?" came Willa's voice from above, steady, strong, unmistakable. Boone's face twisted upward. Willa Thorne stood on the ledge, pale hair, whipping in the wind. Pistol leveled at the man who'd left her to die. No longer a broken woman. She looked like vengeance made flesh. "Mrs. Thorne," Boone rasped. "You're alive." "Where is he?" she asked again, cold as frost. Tucson," Boone stuttered. "Wedding's in 3 days. He's marrying Leora Cross. He thinks you're dead. I swear it." Willa's eyes met Koda's. The exchange needed no words. "Tie them up," she ordered, voice like iron. "We're taking their horses." "What are you planning to do?" Boone asked, eyeing the blade at his throat. Willa climbed down the rocks and stood over the man who once dragged her into hell. She leaned in, close, green eyes fierce. "I'm going to crash a wedding." Riding out of the Dragoon Mountains was a brutal fall from the frozen sky to sun-baked hell. They drove the stolen horses, hard breath steaming from their nostrils. Time wasn't on their side. 3 days. 3 days before Cyrus Maddox made her a ghost with a kiss and a vow. Willa rode with grim resolve that even startled Koda. Gone was the pampered girl who'd fainted at the smell of blood. In her place rode a survivor sleeping in the saddle, eating dry jerky without a word, eyes sharp and sweeping the horizon like a hawk. Civilization had melted away. What remained was forged from fire and snow. By the second day they reached the edge of Benson, a dusty stopover littered with prospectors, gamblers, drunks and women, trying to forget they were once daughters. They reined in at a ridge above town. The sounds floated up out of tune: piano, hollering mule drivers, barking dogs. "I can't go down there," Koda said quietly. "A Chiricahua in Benson is a dead man before his boots touch the ground." Koda scanned the streets below. Scalp hunters run thick in this place. Willa Thorne glanced at him, then down at herself. She was dressed in smoke-darkened buckskins, her skin, sun-kissed hair, braided in the Apache style. She looked more warrior than settler wife. "I can't walk into the cathedral at St. Augustine in Tucson looking like this," she said flatly. "If Cyrus sees me before I'm ready, he'll have me carted off to the asylum before I get a word in. I need clothes," she added. "I need to become Mrs. Sterling again. For just a few hours." Koda gave a slow nod. He reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out 3 old Spanish reales gold coins, pried from a dead command chair years ago. He laid them in her palm. "Trading post," he said. "Edge of town. Go alone. Be fast. Keep your mask on." Willa clutched the coins. They felt heavy, heavier even than the Colt revolver tucked tight against her belly beneath the buffalo hide shirt. "I'll be back before sunset," she said. Then she rode. The stairs hit the moment her boots touched Benson's main street. Men on the boardwalk froze mid-spit, eyes tracking the wild-looking white woman atop a fine mare. Willa kept her chin low, buffalo robe pulled tight to hide the iron beneath. She hitched the horse outside Clyde Dempsey's general store. The bell above the door jangled as she stepped inside. The place reeked of pickled eggs, old sawdust, and cheap perfume. Clyde Dempsey, with a greasy beard and bead-like eyes, looked up from behind the counter. He squinted at her rough edges. "We don't serve beggars." "Or squaws," he muttered, spitting on the floor. Willa walked straight to the counter. Without a word, she slapped one of the gold coins down hard. The thud echoed. Clyde flinched. "I need a dress," she said, voice hoarse from weeks of cold. "A good one. Silk if you got it. Shoes. And soap. A lot of it." Clyde's eyes widened at the glint of gold. His tone flipped like a weather vane. "Right away, ma'am. Right away," he said, now syrupy smooth. "Just got in a blue shipment from St. Louis. Real fine material." He vanished into the back. Willa's heart thundered in her chest. Her eyes scanned the wall behind the counter, tacked between ads for cattle sales and miracle tonics. Was a hand-drawn notice, "Missing. Willa Thorne. Believed to be wandering and mentally unwell. Reward for return to Tucson Asylum. Contact Cyrus Maddox." She stared at the paper. Mentally unwell. He had planned this to the last thread. Clyde returned with an armful of sapphire blue fabric. He set it down, then paused. His eyes flicked between the dress, Willa's face, and the poster behind her. A slow, greasy grin spread across his jaw. "Say." He leaned in, breath sharp with rot. "You got a real familiar look about you." He eyed the coin. "That ain't squaw money. Where'd you get it?" "That's none of your business," Willa replied coolly. "Take the coin. Give me the dress. I'm leaving." She reached for the fabric. Clyde grabbed her wrist. His grip, surprisingly strong, clamped down. "I think it is my business," he said, leering. "Mr. Maddox is offering a fine reward for his little runaway bride. $500. Lot more than one coin, ain't it?" Willa didn't flinch. She didn't scream. The old Willa might have fainted, but the new Willa remembered the icy cabin. She remembered the silence. She remembered the wolves. With her free hand, she reached beneath the robe and drew the heavy Colt cavalry pistol. She jammed the barrel hard beneath Clyde's chin, snapping his head back like a kicked post. He froze, eyes wide. "Let go," she whispered. It wasn't a request. It was a warning carved in stone. Clyde released her instantly, both hands shooting up. Now, no need for hasty action, Mrs. Thorne, ma'am. Just a little misunderstanding." "I was just joking." "The dress." Willa Thorne cut him off, voice ice cold. "The shoes. The soap. Put it all in a sack." Clyde Dempsey's hands were trembling, but he moved fast, grabbing everything in a frenzy. "Now," Willa said, lifting the sack in one hand, keeping the Colt dead level in the other. "You're gonna walk into that back room and lock the door from the inside. If I hear that latch before I ride out, I'll put a hole in your lungs big enough to let the truth whistle through." "Yes, ma'am. I got it. Yes, I do." Clyde shuffled backward like a whipped dog and slammed the door shut behind him. Willa heard the bolt click. She holstered the pistol, grabbed a few strips of jerky from the counter for good measure, and stepped back into the sunlight like she owned the world. When she crested the ridge where Koda waited, the sun was bleeding down behind her, casting her silhouette long and sure. Koda saw the sack tied to her saddle. He saw the way her shoulders set like steel had been forged beneath her skin. "Did you get what you came for?" he asked. Willa looked back at Benson, green eyes flaring. "I got more than clothes, Koda," she said. "I found out I don't need you to save me anymore." Koda gave a slow nod. A flicker of a smile barely there touched the corner of his lips. "Good," he said. "Where we're headed next, I can't hold your hand." Tucson shimmered on the desert horizon like a mirage of wealth and lies, a sprawl of adobe walls and timber roofs baked under the Arizona sun. To outsiders, it looked like progress carved from wild land. To Willa Thorne, watching from the mesquite shade 2 miles out, it looked like the mouth of a steel trap. She stood near a warped trough at an abandoned station, scrubbing weeks of dragoon dust and mountain soot from her skin. The water was tepid stale, but enough to wash away the war paint of ash and sweat. She shed the buckskins slowly, the garments that had kept her alive when silk would have gotten her killed. She folded them with quiet reverence. That skin belonged to the woman who had survived. Now she had to wear the skin of the one they thought dead. She stepped into the sapphire silk dress bought in Benson. It had been meant to make her look soft, beautiful, possession. As she fastened the bodice, she realized it no longer fit like it used to. The pampered curves were gone, burned away by hunger, wind, and war. Her waist was smaller, her shoulders lean, but roped with muscle. The fabric hung awkwardly, but it didn't matter. She pulled her blonde hair back into a tight bun, smoothing flyaways with the stagnant water. Her reflection in the ripples stared back, sharp and calm, unrecognizable. Koda sat on horseback 10 yards out, watching her like a smith appraising a blade, not with lust, but with cold precision. "You look like them again," he said, his voice low, carried on the dry whisper of sagebrush wind. Willa turned toward him. She smoothed the skirt over the bruises, darkening her legs, checked the tiny derringer hidden in the garter beneath her hem. A toy next to the Colt, but the only one she could hide. "I may look like them," she said, steady. "But I'm not one of them." She paused. "I'm what they forgot to finish off." Koda dipped his chin once slow, solemn. He gestured toward the city where church bells had begun to toll the hour. "The wedding's at high noon," he said. "You've got the sun at your back. Ride hard." Willa hesitated, nerves flaring like a match. "And you?" she asked. Koda, her compass through fire and frost, gave no comfort. "The hawk watches," he said. "If that city tries to swallow you, I'll break its teeth." Then he turned his painted Mustang and vanished into the brush like mist drawn back into the mountain. Willa was alone. She mounted the stolen mare and rode toward the walls of Tucson. The moment she passed beneath the city arch, the world transformed from the hush of desert to the clamor of celebration. The streets buzzed like a fairground. Banners in red, white, and blue fluttered from balconies. Carriages clattered along polished cobblestone. Gentlemen in top hats and ladies in parasols drifted towards St. Augustine Cathedral, all laughter and lace. Willa held her chin high, her face carved into noble ice, the expression of someone born into fine names and finer lies. Men along the boardwalk turned and squinted. Whispers stirred the dust. "Is that—" "No, Couldn't be. Eyes followed her, but doubt made them blink. Willa Thorne was dead. That's what they all believed. A woman gone mad and swallowed by winter. She rode past the gawkers like a ghost in blue silk, ignoring their whispered traps and sideways glances. But she wasn't headed for the cathedral, not yet. She tied her horse a block down from the First Territorial Bank, a red brick fortress of iron grates and granite pride. It wasn't a church, but this building was where the West's real faith was kept money. This was where Cyrus Maddox held power, not in charm, but in ledgers. Willa pushed open the heavy oak doors. Inside, the air was cool and still, scented with ink wax and polished wood. The roar of the street vanished like smoke behind her. Tellers behind brass cages paused mid-count. At a wide mahogany desk in the corner, Amos Pike, the bank manager, looked up from a stack of foreclosure notices. He was short, always damp with nervous sweat, even in winter. He blinked. His spectacles slid down his nose. His jaw dropped before he squeaked out, "Mrs. Thorne." He leapt to his feet so fast his chair crashed behind him. "Merciful heavens! We were told the memorial service is next week." Willa's reply was calm as snowfall. "Rumors of my death were premature, Mr. Pike." She didn't raise her voice, didn't smile. Her tone had the cold weight of a judge's gavel. She glided past the teller gate and took the chair across from his desk legs, crossed chin high. "I've been recovering up in the high country," she said. "My husband tends to dramatize things when I'm out of reach." Amos dabbed his forehead with a handkerchief. But Mr. Maddox said you'd lost your senses, that you were dangerous." Willa arched a brow and gestured at herself. Silk dress, pristine posture, regal, not a hair out of place. "Do I look dangerous to you, Mr. Pike?" "I'm here to retrieve my wedding pearls," she continued. "A surprise for my dear husband. It'd be a shame to attend my own ceremony without my father's gift." The safety deposit box," Amos stammered. "Mr. Maddox gave strict orders. The account is frozen. Probate." Willa leaned in. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried like thunder. "The box is in the name of Thomas Quinn, my father, not Cyrus Maddox. If you deny me, I'll walk out that door, straight to Marshal Eli Blackwood." Her eyes pinned him like a knife. "I'll tell him that, while Governor Bartholomew Kane is in town, your bank is helping rob a dead man's daughter." I wonder how fast word would spread. What would happen if there was a bank run on the day of a high society wedding? The air thickened. Pike paled. No need for that, Mrs. Thorne," he squeaked. "Just a misunderstanding. This way, please." He led her through to the vault. The steel door creaked open. Pike's hands shook as he unlocked box 402 and slid the long drawer onto the table. I'll give you a moment," he mumbled, scurrying back through the gate. Willa's hands, steady until now, began to tremble. She opened the lid. Inside, bonds, thick stacks of cash, a velvet pouch of pearls. But beneath them all lay a heavy envelope sealed with red wax. Her father's seal. She broke it. The paper inside was thick. Her father's handwriting, shaky, desperate, written days before the heart attack that ended him. "My dearest Willa, Cyrus is not the man we thought. He's buried in debt to the Chicago men. He needs the ranch, the water, and he's desperate. He's threatened me, Willa. If I die, it was him. The enclosed deed is the original. Hide it." A single tear slipped down Willa's cheek. It wasn't grief. It was hate solidified into something permanent. Cyrus Maddox hadn't just tried to kill her. He'd murdered the one man who had truly loved her. She tucked the deed and letter into her bodice, tight against her skin. They felt like armor. Straightening her shoulders, she walked back into the light. Amos Pike was waiting, but his attention wasn't on her anymore. He was staring at the front doors of the bank, mouth ajar. There, blocking the light, stood a towering figure, unmoving. A silhouette cut from steel and vengeance. Jet Kincaid. Cyrus Maddox's personal lapdog, with a tin star on his chest and a bounty in his back pocket, stood near the entrance of the bank, thumbs hooked in his gun belt, a greasy grin spreading across his sun-leathered face. "Well, I'll be damned," Kincaid drawled, loud enough to claim the whole room. "Cyrus told me to keep my eyes open for some madwoman trying to crash the party. But I'll be guessed the ghost really does walk." Amos Pike pressed himself back against the wall, nearly knocking over a filing shelf. "Sheriff. She claims a whole hell of a lot." Kincaid cut in boots, clicking as he stepped closer, spurs jingling with each smug stride. "Cyrus says she's loony as a wagon wheel. Said she needed a padded cell with a priest on standby." He pulled a pair of iron cuffs from his belt. "Let's not make a mess of it, Willa. Turn around." But she didn't move. Her hand hovered near her thigh where the derringer waited in this lace holster. Kincaid caught the motion, his hand drifting toward his coat. "Don't make me draw sugar." "Step aside, Jet," Willa said calmly. "Can't do that, darlin'." Kincaid smirked. "Got a $500 bonus waiting on me if I get you locked up before they say I do. You're my retirement plan." He reached for her. That's when the world blew apart. Boom! The concussion rocked the lobby, shattering glass, rattling bones, throwing a blast of smoke and debris through the bank like a thunderclap from hell. The front window exploded inward, shards raining like hail. Screams echoed from the street beyond. A wall of black smoke rolled past the shattered door. "What in holy hell?" Kincaid shouted, spinning around, hand on his gun. Across the street, the livery stable burned fire, licking high and wild. "I will break its teeth," Koda had said. Willa didn't freeze. She didn't scream. She moved. Reaching across the teller counter, she grabbed the brass coin tray, heavy flat lined with silver dollars. With a grunt, she swung it hard. Crack! The tray slammed into the back of Kincaid's head. The sound was sickening. His knees buckled. He dropped like a sack of flour, face first to the floor, out cold before he hit the wood. Amos Pike shrieked, covering his mouth. Willa stood over the unconscious sheriff, breathing hard dress, rustling with each heave of her chest. She took a slow moment to smooth the silk across her hips, composed even regal. She looked at Amos, who was shaking like a dry leaf in a windstorm. "Mr. Pike," she said, evenly, voice cutting through the ringing in her ears. "You didn't see a thing." The sheriff slipped. "You understand?" Amos nodded so fast he looked like a bobblehead. Willa stepped over Kincaid's limp body, crunching over broken glass, and pushed through the door into the smoke. Across the rooftops, the bells of St. Augustine Cathedral began to toll. High noon. 12 chimes. The wedding had begun, and Willa Thorne was finally ready to walk down the aisle. The Cathedral of St. Augustine stood like a stone sanctuary against the desert blaze, its high arches and stained glass cutting sharp against the sunlight outside. Inside, the air was thick with beeswax, perfume, and power. The pews were packed with the elite of the territory, the men who ruled by law, land, or ledger. At the front of the church, near the altar, Governor Bartholomew Kane shifted impatiently in his formal wool coat. Beside him stood the bride Leora Cross, a ghost in white lace imported from Paris. Her veil fluttered slightly. Her fingers trembled around a bouquet of lilies. And there was Cyrus Maddox, looking every bit the handsome widower. Reborn slicked hair, tailored coat, a posture full of pride and ambition. His lips curled into a subtle, private smile. The dirty work was done. The cabin was buried in snow. His barren wife nothing but a forgotten shadow. 10 minutes from now, he'd be the son-in-law of a copper baron, the most powerful man in the Arizona Territory. At the pulpit, Reverend Hale cleared his throat. The organ music softened, then fell silent. "Dearly beloved," the priest began, voice ringing off the vaulted ceiling, "we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Boom! It wasn't thunder. It was the cathedral doors slamming open with such force the hinges groaned. Gasps swept through the congregation. Heads whipped around. Murmurs turned to stunned silence. Framed in the light of the burning sun, silhouetted by the smoke still drifting from the livery fire, stood a lone figure. Not a guest, not an apparition. It was Willa Thorne. She stepped out of the light and into the shadow of the nave alive, armed with truth and dressed for war. The sapphire silk dress she'd bought in Benson was now dust-stained. The hem torn from the ride spurred hard across miles of heat and judgment. Her boots were scuffed, dulled by the road. Her once delicate blonde hair, formerly curled and pinned by high society maids, was pulled back tight, severe, revealing a face with no softness left to spare. The sun had darkened her skin. Her lips were cracked from wind and silence. And her eyes, those green eyes, burned with something holy and terrifying. She walked straight down the center aisle. Each step echoed click, 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 like a clock ticking down to judgment. A hush fell over the pews, followed by ripples of confusion. Is that... No, it can't be. She looks like a ghost. Cyrus Maddox turned. The blood drained from his face so fast it looked like his veins had been emptied. His hand gripped the altar rail to keep himself upright. His mouth worked, but no words came. Willa Thorne didn't look at the crowd, didn't spare a glance for Governor Kane or for Leora Cross frozen behind her veil. Her gaze stayed locked on Cyrus, straight through him. She stopped 10 paces from the altar. The silence was absolute. Willa Cyrus whispered, voice breaking, "My God!" Even in his shock, his performance instincts kicked in. He sprang forward, arms open, playing the part of the loving husband reunited with a miracle. "Willa, you're alive," he cried, loud enough to reach the back pews. "Thank the heavens we thought you wandered into the canyons. In your madness. We thought the fever." He reached to embrace her, likely to whisper threats in her ear. She didn't move. She simply raised her right hand. In it, the dragoon cavalry revolver, cold steel, aimed straight at his chest. Gasps rang through the cathedral. One woman fainted. The governor ducked behind a pew. The priest staggered back from the pulpit. Eli Blackwood, who had been standing near the vestry, stepped forward, hand hovering near his gun. "Don't move, Cyrus," Willa said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it filled the cathedral like a mountain wind. "One more step, and I'll bury a bullet in your heart." "Willa, please," Cyrus stammered, palms up, glancing toward the shocked congregation. "You're not well. You're having another one of your episodes." He gestured weakly behind her. "Dr. Hal Garner is here. Let us help you." "There is no madness." Willa said, her hand unwavering. "Only truth. And the truth is colder than that mountain cabin you left me in." With her free hand she reached into her bodice and pulled out the thick envelope. She tossed it to the floor at the governor's feet. "Read it," she commanded. Governor Bartholomew Kane, pale and sweating, hesitated. But curiosity and the barrel pointed at his ally moved him. He knelt and broke the wax seal. The mark of Thomas Quinn. He opened the letter. Cyrus's voice cracked into a roar. "Lies," he shouted. "She forged it. She's sick in the head. Someone stop her." "Where the hell is Sheriff Kincaid?" "The sheriff," Willa said flatly, "is sleeping," and her voice turned to ice. "And you, Cyrus, are done lying." She turned her gaze to Leora Cross, still trembling behind her veil. "He didn't love you." "Leora," Willa said, gentler now. "He needed your father's money after he blew through mine. He wanted a new wife because he thought I couldn't give him an heir." She placed her hand over her stomach. But he was wrong about that too. The room gasped collectively. Cyrus's eyes locked on her hand. His face drained of color again. "You're," he breathed. "Pregnant," Willa said, calm and clear. I tried to tell you, but you were too busy paying men to drag me off in a covered wagon, too busy locking me in a shack with no fire and no food. You left your wife and your unborn child for the wolves, all for a railroad contract." Governor Kane's hands trembled as he read the letter. When he looked up, his face was a storm of fury. "Maddox," he thundered, "this letter details fraudulent forgery, threats, blackmail, even murder. Is this true?" "It's a damn lie," Cyrus shouted, backing toward the altar. "She's a witch. She's poisoned you all." His words rang with desperation. Cyrus Maddox realized the game was over. The mask of the grieving gentleman slipped, revealing the cornered animal beneath. Cyrus Maddox didn't lunge at Willa Thorne. He grabbed Leora Cross. One hand tangled in her hair, the other yanked a silver-plated pistol from inside his coat. "Back off," Cyrus screeched, dragging the shrieking bride in front of him like a shield. "I'm leaving this place, and if anyone follows, the girl dies." Eli Blackwood froze. Governor Kane froze. Willa didn't. She kept the Colt aimed steady, but she couldn't shoot. Leora was in the way. "You're pathetic," Willa said, voice dripping with venom. "Hiding behind another woman. How noble." "Shut up," Cyrus bellowed, dragging Leora toward the vestry door. "I swear I'll do it. I'll blow her brains out." He was 5 feet from the door, 5 feet from slipping away into the shadows. Then a sound cut the air, a sharp, slicing whistle. And suddenly, thwack, Cyrus let out a blood-curdling scream. His hand, the one holding the pistol, was pinned to the heavy wooden door by a long black feathered arrow. The gun dropped to the floor. He stared at his own hand impaled, unable to comprehend the pain. Leora Cross stumbled free, sobbing, collapsing to the floor. High above in the open arch of the choir loft, a shadow shifted. Just a glimpse, a red headband, a flash of ochre war paint, gone in a blink. Willa didn't look up. She already knew who had fired. Eli Blackwood didn't hesitate. He tackled Cyrus Maddox, hard slamming him into the cathedral's cold stone floor. 2 deputies, Clyde and Warren, rushed in, securing his wrists as Cyrus howled like a man possessed. The tycoon, the murderer, the would-be king of the territory, dragged off, cursing Willa's name with every breath. The cathedral broke into chaos. Screams, stampeding feet, gasps, sobs. Willa lowered the revolver. Her arms trembled now that the adrenaline was gone. Her knees almost gave way. Marshal Eli walked over, pausing near the doorframe. He eyed the still quivering arrow, buried in the wood, then looked up at the choir loft window. Then he turned to Willa. "That was a hell of a shot," he muttered. "Apache make. Chiricahua, if I'm guessing right." Willa met his eyes. "I didn't see anything, Marshal." Eli studied her, really studied her. He saw the scarred hands, the fire behind her calm. And as a man who'd lived long enough to know the gap between law and justice, he nodded slowly. "Neither did I, Mrs. Thorne," he said, tipping his hat. "Neither did I." The trial of Cyrus Maddox gripped the territory like a wildfire. The testimony of Amos Pike, the missing sheriff, Jet Kincaid, the capture of Boone Rask. Nate Barlow and Cade Mercer, up in the Dragoons, painted a tale of greed, lies, and cold-blooded betrayal. Cyrus Maddox was sentenced to hang. He died screaming, a coward through and through. Willa didn't attend the hanging. She was back at the ranch, Quinn Ranch now, named to honor her father, Thomas Quinn. 6 months had passed. Spring painted the desert in gold and violet blooms. Willa rocked slowly on the wide front porch, a wooden cradle by her side. Inside, her son slept peacefully. She'd named him Finn for strength, for the lion he'd need to become. She ran the ranch herself. The ranch hands respected her. They'd heard the stories. They knew she'd survived a winter built to kill. They knew she'd walked into a church and brought a titan to his knees. No one crossed her. The sun sank behind the hills, casting long shadows across the valley. She sat still, eyes scanning the tree line like she did every evening. And then there he was, on the ridge, silhouetted against the sunset. Koda, still as stone atop his paint horse. He never came down to the porch, never crossed the invisible line between his world and hers. He was wind, smoke, memory, but he always checked. Willa Rose walked to the edge of the porch and lifted her hand palm open. A silent greeting, a wordless thank you. On the ridge, the warrior raised his rifle high over his head. A final salute to the woman who'd gone into the storm and come out forged. Then he turned his horse and disappeared into the dusk. Willa smiled. She wasn't afraid of the night. Not anymore. She looked down at little Finn, still sleeping, chest rising and falling with perfect peace. "Sleep well, Finn," she whispered, brushing his hair gently. "The wolves won't come for us." She turned and stepped inside, pulling the door shut behind her with quiet strength. "We are the wolves now." And that, folks, is the story of Willa Thorne, the woman they tried to erase. But she didn't vanish. She rose. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is leave a survivor behind. If this tale of Wild West justice stirred something in you, smash that like button. Subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss another legend. And tell us, what do you think of Koda's silent choice to stay in the shadows? Drop it in the comments. Until next time, keep the fire burning. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work.